There are moments in life when you realize all your sacrifices have resulted in something tangible, something genuine. That was exactly how I felt when I signed the final paperwork for the house. I wasn't just buying a building constructed of bricks and wood. I was protecting my future, my reward for every restless night, every extra shift, every minute I deprived myself of minor comforts, so that one day I could afford something that was completely mine. It was a two-story house in a quiet, well-kept area, the kind of place where families put up Christmas lights in December, where kids rode their bikes in the evenings, and where parents took delight in their lawns. The backyard was my favorite spot. Large, open, full of possibilities. Maybe one day I'd build a deck, host summer barbecues, or, if life went well, watch my kids play out there while Sophia and I sipped coffee on a Sunday morning. Sophia, she had been with me for 5 years, 5 years of marriage, and before that 2 years of dating. I loved her. Or at least, I had convinced myself that I did. Love, after all, wasn't only about sentiments. It was about commitment, about moving forward even when things became hard. And things had grown rough. I overlooked the indications. Back then, the way her parents treated me like their personal ATM, the way she never hesitated to remind me of what she deserved, the way her adoration always seemed to increase once I did something for her. Maybe I should have spotted it sooner. Maybe I should have realized that real love wasn't intended to feel like a transaction, but I was too deep in it, too focused on the future I wanted to construct. So when the day finally came to bring Sophia to the house for the first time, I was nervous. Excited, yes, but nervous. I wanted her to love it as much as I did. I wanted her to see it as the home we would build our future in. I remember standing outside with the keys in my fingers, turning to look at her, anticipating a reaction. She barely even glanced at the house before turning to me with an emotion I couldn't quite place. Not excitement, not thankfulness, simply entitlement. She snatched the keys from my hand, jingling them in her palm like she had just been handed a new toy. "My parents will live here too," she said so nonchalantly, so effortlessly, as if she had already made the decision long before I had even handed her the keys. At first I believed I misheard her. "What?" I asked, forcing out a little bewildered laugh. Sophia shrugged, walking toward the door as if the place already belonged to her. "My parents. They'll move in with us. There's plenty of space, so it shouldn't be an issue." I glanced at her, waiting for her to grin, to let me know it was a joke, that she was simply testing my reaction. It never came. "Sophia," I said, trying to keep my voice cool. "This is our house. Just us." She turned to me then, her face tightening, her lips squeezing into a tiny line. "That's selfish," she said, as if I had just suggested dumping them into the streets. I blinked, trying to grasp what was happening. "Sophia, I worked my ass off for this house. I spent years saving. This was for us, for our future. She didn't." "Look impressed. In fact, she looked annoyed." "If you don't like it," she said, her voice abrupt and dismissive, "you can leave." The words impacted me harder than I expected, not just because of what she said, but because of how she said it. There was no doubt, no anxiety, no fear that she would lose me over this. She meant it. For the first time in our marriage, I felt something shift inside me, a revelation that maybe, just maybe, I had been looking at things through the wrong lens all along. I believed this house was the start of a new era, a fresh beginning for us. Yet standing there, staring at my wife, the woman I had battled so hard to provide for, I realized something chilling. Maybe this wasn't a beginning at all. Maybe this was the end. When I married Sophia, I believed I knew what I was entering into. We had been together long enough for me to know her weaknesses, her stubbornness, her caustic tongue, her unwillingness to compromise. But love, I told myself, was about embracing the good with the bad. And in the beginning, there was a lot of good. We laughed, we traveled, we built a life together. Yet then came the cracks. Little at first, like tiny fractures in glass. Sophia's family was the first sign. Her parents, Margaret and Henry, had always been involved in our lives, but I never viewed it as a problem. In fact, I wanted to believe it was a good thing, a sign that they cared about their daughter, about us. Yet over time, I began to learn that their engagement wasn't out of love. It was out of convenience. They saw me as an opportunity, a walking pocketbook they could dip into if life got a little too painful for them. It started with small loans. Margaret would call Sophia, her voice dripping with anxiety. "Sweetheart, your father and I are struggling this month. If you could send a little something, we'd be so thankful." And Sophia, she never even hesitated. She would transfer the money without so much as a chat with me, as if our finances were hers alone to govern. At first, I didn't mind. I was raised to take care of family, to support the people I loved. And besides, it wasn't every month, merely the occasional request when circumstances grew tight for them. But as the demands became more frequent, a sudden medical bill, a rent increase, Henry's business enterprise that somehow never got off the ground, every single time Sophia sent them money. And every single time, I told myself all was okay. Until one day, I opened our joint account and found a massive withdrawal, $5,000 gone overnight. Always be there to pick up the pieces. Now, she stood in front of me, a lady who had lost everything. And the saddest part? She still didn't fully grasp why. I took a deep breath. "Go home, Sophia," I whispered quietly. She blinked. "But I don't." I cut her off. "Exactly. Goodbye." Then I turned, walked inside, and slammed the door behind me. And just like that, it was done. I stood in my living room that night, staring at the door long after Sophia had left. She had come searching for answers, for closure, for something, anything that would make her feel like she still had a place in my life. Yet I had nothing left to give her. No pity, no second chances, no more bits of myself to suffer for someone who had only ever stolen. I wasn't furious anymore. I wasn't even relieved. I was just done. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a peace that was unfamiliar, yet welcomed. Sophia's last stand, I assumed that was the end of it. I thought Sophia would ultimately understand that her decisions had led her here, yet I should have known better. The next morning, I woke up to a succession of texts, numbers I didn't recognize. "How could you do this to Sophia? You're a monster! You abandoned your wife!" It didn't take me long to figure out what had happened. Sophia had begun a campaign. She had gone to friends, acquaintances, anyone who would listen, weaving a sob story about how I had betrayed her, left her with nothing, thrown her out like trash. I could see it so clearly in my head, her crocodile tears, her voice cracking, as she exaggerated every tiny detail, painting herself as the victim. And the worst part? Some people believed her, not everyone, but enough. Enough for my phone to keep lighting up with texts and calls from folks who had never cared about our marriage before. But now, suddenly, they all had an opinion. I dismissed most of them. But one message caught my attention. It was, from an old acquaintance, someone I hadn't spoken to in a while. "I just thought you should know. Sophia's telling people you cheated on her." I froze. Cheated? I had spent years being faithful, being the perfect husband, giving everything I had, and now? She was trying to rewrite the story. I let out a bitter, weary laugh. This was Sophia's last desperate move. If she couldn't make me come back, she would try to destroy me. The confrontation. I wasn't going to sit back and let her drag my name through the mud. I dialed her number. She answered on the first ring. "Oh, so now you want to talk?" she sneered. "Cut the nonsense, Sophia," I said, my voice harsher than I expected. "I know what you're doing." Silence. Then she scoffed. "I don't know what you're talking about." I clenched my jaw. Lying about me, saying I cheated, That's low. Even for you. She exhaled sharply, like she'd been caught but didn't. Want to admit it? People will believe what they want to believe. No, Sophia. You made them believe it. You spread the lie. She didn't deny it. Of course she didn't. Because to her, this wasn't about truth. It wasn't even about love. It was about control. She had lost control over me. So now she was trying to control the narrative instead. You ruined my life first, she snapped, her voice shaking. You humiliated me. You took everything away from me. You made me look weak. There it was. It wasn't about what I had done. It was about how I had made her look. She didn't care that she had hurt me. She didn't care that she had taken me for granted. She only cared that I had finally stood up for myself. I let out a slow breath. Sophia, this is the last time we are ever going to speak. Her breath hitched. What? You want to play the victim? Go ahead. You want to spread lies? Fine. I don't care anymore. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle. Although, you and I both know the truth. Stillness. For a moment, I thought she had hung up, then a choked sob. I hate you, she murmured. I really, really hate you. And this time, she was the one to end the call. I stared at the phone for a long time. Then, I deleted her number.